So, before we get started, please down below already now like tonight's episode and subscribe to our channel if you haven't. And perhaps most importantly, share tonight's episode widely on your social networks and with your fellow spiritual seekers, family, and friends, because tonight's episode is really beautiful and it's a great way to start off the holiday season. So it really is for absolutely anybody who appreciates the spiritual principle we will be going into tonight, which is gratitude. So IKYA Live is a little different in that we don't just talk about the news or topics of the day. We want to have a conversation, and IKYA wants to dig into the spiritual principles at play. Of course, next week in the United States is Thanksgiving, and autumn all over the Northern Hemisphere is a time of harvest and gratitude, giving thanks for all that we have and all that we've accomplished for the year, our friends and family. So we thought gratitude would be the perfect episode as a Thanksgiving edition because it is a really powerful concept. It's talked about a lot in spirituality, but arguably it's a principle that a lot of people find a bit confusing and not quite sure how to approach it. So what we're going to do tonight is really unpack everything around gratitude, thankfulness, and gratefulness. And we want you to bring your questions and comments to this discussion. So please write them in the comments here on YouTube Live. And we're also going to take questions and comments from the audience here. So without further ado, we can get started. And we were kind of curious, IKYA, what is it with gratitude? Why do a lot of spiritual seekers find it to be a bit of a confusing principle?
I often start with evolution and biology and genetics because we need to understand ourselves as humans and how much we think and believe is, this is me and I'm doing that, and it's just a bunch of programs, right? And gratitude is one of those things that are strongly connected to spiritual practices and spiritual states. And at the same time, there's so much connected to our genetic makeup, but not in a good way. We're going to start there because what you need to understand is that we have two different types of gratitude. We have what we call the horizontal version, which then is the conditional one. It's basically, your survival. And then you have the unconditional gratitude, which is a spiritual one. And we need to understand the difference between the two. So let's start with the horizontal one. Now, when you have conditional gratitude, it means it's connected to something. It's a reaction. And it's then connected to whether or not you have what you need. So think of, throughout evolution, we haven't had much. Humans have been struggling, right, to have enough food, shelter, all of that. So gratitude is simply the relief and the release of stress connected to what you think you need in order to survive. And within a community, a tribe, you need to take care of each other, right? When someone needs something, it is in your best interest to invest in that person, right? If you have a hunter and that hunter is sick, it's in your interest to then give the hunter what he needs so he can heal and do his job, right? So that exchange has always been there. And gratitude is also when the brain recognizes, I will live another day, and that person gave me this thing. So the common types of gratitude is very much connected to concrete manifestations and your recognition of it as being enough, right? So when people give you something and you feel seen, this is exactly what you need, right? Then you can feel a state of gratitude. If someone gives you something that they think you need, you may feel insulted because you don't recognize it, right? But also understand that in today's society, because survival is so much more complicated. And we're being told that we need everything to survive, right? The whole premise of business and sales is to convince people, unless you have this thing, your life will suck forever, right? So we are exposed to all of these things that we're told, like, we need this to survive. We need this to be happy. If I don't have that, people will not love me. And it's not just things, it's who we are, how we express ourselves. So we have all these expectations. And because life is so big and the tribe now is global, it's very difficult to understand who's who and what's what and what we actually need. And because of that, we're vulnerable. Because through our needs, we also signal who do we belong to, right? Each tribe will have their own culture, and then, like, we need this. This is us. This is how we express ourselves. And by needing that, wanting that, you are also expressing that you're part of the culture. And you have to make the right choices. We try to do this today too, by buying the right clothes, signaling the right status, the right brands, all of this, having the right views. It's all very tribal stuff. And every time we do it right, we will feel a sense of relief. So, also think when we feel in a tribe, if we now jump back, a couple 100,000 years, and we don't get what we need, we will feel the opposite. We're supposed to feel threatened and entitled. Because when we cannot take care of ourselves, the smartest strategy is to guilt other people into helping us. Right? So we have that spectrum of being grateful when people show that, oh, they value me, I'm important. And also when they don't, we turn that around into a sense of entitlement. So when we feel stressed, that's a sign that I'm not surviving. I'm not getting what I need. And I'm not sure how to navigate. So what do? We're told by our genes to become entitled, to project that I don't have what I need to survive. So you will produce a lot of stress, a lot of cortisol, a lot of destructive thoughts, because the survival game is so much more difficult. And it's very challenging then to feel grateful, because gratitude in the brain is a signal, I have what I need. I am content. I am seen. I'm well fed. I'm protected. I'm part of everything, or part of my group. Today, we all feel the opposite. We feel lost. We feel invisible. We have no idea what it takes to be a successful human anymore. Rules don't exist, And so we feel the survival stress. And then it's impossible to feel grateful because we're not supposed to. The brain relates to whatever rules we experience as survival. It doesn't matter what it is. So, for instance, when you see kids of rich people, I've met quite a few of them. And, they have different problems, right? It's like they have different expectations and what it takes to survive, right? You can be in high school and you just got your driver's license and you got, a Porsche, a really nice Porsche. But then you completely implode because all our friends have Ferraris, right? And this will destroy your life, right? How can you go to school in a Porsche? It's they will just laugh at you and call you poor because the rules are different. The brain will adjust its expectation of what it takes to survive based on, this is my reality. And we're all going to behave like this today. It's easier to feel gratitude when you have very little, right? And we all know it. This is why we seek the simple life. We actually feel richer when we're poor. Not poor in a rich society. That's a different thing, because then you still relate to the rules of survival in a rich society. And then poor is not a good thing. I'm talking about when we do not have a lot of emphasis on material goods and wealth. When that is our reality, it's easier to feel gratitude. So most people today never feel gratitude at all. They can feel a certain sense of relief when they get something, and they feel, oh yeah, I'll survive, or I will be accepted now because I have this jacket, or I have this handbag. Everyone will admire me. And it will take you about one day, and then it's just a bag or a piece of clothing. And one knows this, right? If you buy a new car, normally that will make you feel better about yourself for, the next month or 2 or 3, and then it's just a car. With clothes, it's the same thing, because it never works. We have so much stress today that, we're constantly told by our brain and our bodies that, no, we're not sure we can survive. The competition is too fierce and we don't understand the rules. So then we project a sense of entitlement, because you don't know what you need, but you're sure that you deserve it, right? And this is why entitlement today is such an illness in our society. Because people feel entitled by default, and they have no idea why. Because they don't know what they need anymore. And they feel like people are not taking care of them. Right? So gratitude becomes very difficult. So, true gratitude is not connected to anything. And this is difficult to understand when we in our lives today have this much stress, and we believe that gratitude is connected to things, manifestations, and that you're given something you need. But it's not connected to anything. It's a state of consciousness. And in the human form, when you just look at your mind and your emotions, and often how we relate to gratitude today, is almost like being in the position of a beggar. Right? Many people have that feeling. Oh, I'm supposed to be grateful. Because when we are in a state of victimhood, when we have stress and emotional pain, again, we are supposed to demand, we're supposed to expect, because we don't know how to create it ourselves. So that's the state we are in. And then often the story in the brain goes, well, am I supposed to show gratitude when I clearly don't get what I need? Because your level of stress is telling you that you're clearly not getting what you need, because then you wouldn't feel this level of stress. And then we try to self-medicate through all sorts of strategies. Some of them we're in control over, but we also use other people and our sense of entitlement as a way to try to self-medicate our way out of the stress. Because we know that we're supposed to be in the state of gratitude. Because that means that I'm doing well, I'm thriving, I will survive. But we're all too stressed. So, back to the point that true gratitude is not connected to anything. What is really interesting, if we just go into that more unconditional state, we'll go back and forth between the two so you can examine yourself, because this is really what you need to do. Gratitude, spiritually, is actually the state of imagination. What? In your brain, it's the state of imagination. And how is that? Now, your heart has brain cells. All your organs have brain cells. This is in a recent discoveries in the world of science, that we have brain cells in practically every organ, operating independently of the main brain. So it means that your heart can have experiences. It will think, it will feel, it will have memories, it will react, it will relate to the world from itself. The same with your intestines and all your organs. And it means it then provides, and this is really smart for a life form. It's interesting that we only figured this out recently, and we haven't figured out everything, in our culture yet. But it offers inner discussion, right? Because it means that the different organs and bodily functions may have actual thoughts and experiences, and may then reflect back to the brain. So the brain will then be corrected and mirrored, and there will be internal discussions. This is also what we find in Chinese medicine, for instance. The idea that the different organs and organ energies and have consciousness, that they operate in kind of different channels, right? And now Western medicine has confirmed that, yeah, this is the case. So, in your heart, you have brain cells. And everything connected to what we often talk about as the spiritual heart, the emotional heart, that is real. You have brain cells that are dedicated to the experience of the heart in that perspective. So, the important part is how the different kind of clusters of brain cells in your body, how they are communicating with the brain and what's happening in that communication. What we see is when we are in a state of gratitude, like in the heart, is that the heart rhythm changes. It's slight, but it changes. And it causes your arteries to swell and open up. So basically means that your heart expands physically. And it will feel full because there will be kind of more blood flowing through, but you will get a physical sensation of fullness. Just like your stomach, right? Remember that when you have eaten and you're full, you fear survival less, right? You're happy, you're fat and happy, right? And you relax and, oh, life is good, until you want another snack. But at least, in that moment, you feel, yeah, life is good, I've eaten. Very kind of deep genetic programs. But in your heart, it's the same thing. Your heart also relates to the fullness of whatever we kind of associate with the heart. It's connectedness, it's love, it's being seen, it's being part of something. It's having what we need for real. And what happens when this is going on in the heart physically is that these brain cells are sending signals to the brain. And through brain scans, one can see what's happening now. There will be waves of kind of brain patterns. So like each kind of like flush that comes through the brain, it's the state of imagination. It's the same thing. And this is really interesting. So gratitude is the state of imagination. And why is that? Now, just think of when you are hungry and you haven't eaten, and you see food, you will eat it. You will have no consideration, is this actually healthy? Is this fun? Is this beautiful? Is this interesting to eat? Does it give me something more than just stuffing myself? No, it will be basic survival. And so it is in the heart. When you feel and experience your life as stressful, that you're disconnected, that you're disenfranchised, that you're afraid, your heart will close. And the interesting thing, we have all these terms for this, but now we know it's biologically true as well. So when we open up and we feel full, then we begin to imagine, right? Because we need, right, life is wonderful. I'm in a state where I can recognize the love in my life. I have what I need. And in this state, you're less focused on things. Just like when you're with people you love, right? Then you just know, the simple life, that's really it. Just being with friends, having, a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, whatever it is. But you're just having it. I don't need things. And in that exact moment, shopping to self-medicate is just like, I don't need that. Because your heart is full. But it means that you're able to imagine beyond what is already manifested. Now, the brain has basically two different types of creativity. You have the survival creativity, and then you have the gratitude creativity. The heart operates differently and the brain operates differently. Think of when you are in fear and stress, then the brain becomes what we refer to as binary, meaning that it sees everything as black and white. It's survival or death, friend, enemy, food, poison. Because when you are in stress and when you're in fear, you just have to survive, and you boil everything down to two options. So then creativity is about finding solutions. It's problem solving, right? It's basically, this situation could kill me. So which choice will help me stay alive? You're only dealing with what is already manifested, right? You're not imagining something else. You have to relate to this. So you lose creativity, you lose imagination. You become extremely physical, and you become more ape-like. The most primitive parts of your brain will take over. So the abstract mind disappears. Your creativity, true creativity, disappears. You can't imagine anything because it's really just about dealing with what is right in front of you. So you become locked into the current manifestations and simply trying to solve the problem of not dying. So that is one type of creativity. But what we're talking about here is creativity coming from imagination. So when you feel that your heart is full and your brain opens up and you can see these kind of waves of patterns and energy and information, it's about the brain now releasing itself from survival and fear. So, what if? What could be? What haven't I done? Right? Because you're past problem solving. You're past trying to not die. And then it releases a new level of imagination and creativity. And this is the true creativity, because true creativity is bringing into being something that only exists in imagination. So you open the bridge between what could be, right? The possibilities. And for the brain to say, how can I bring this in? So gratitude is also a signal that, well, I'm mastering my space. Right? So then you can try to step up. But this is a physical thing as well, right? This is why it's so fascinating. Also in Chinese medicine, they do not distinguish between the body and the mind and the spirit. See it as one. And it is one. This is an example of how biology works, with your states of consciousness. It can open your imagination, consciousness, and can assist you spiritually. It's one body, right? So, when you are in the state of imagination, possibilities, it means that you will be looking for the opportunities. Think of when you are in a state of fear and stress, you can't see beyond your current state. You're only focusing on problem solving within what is already imagined, what is already manifested. And only that. So you will go around in your life and just repeat your sense of reality, and you will not connect to any opportunities or possibilities and how to go beyond your current behavior. I'm sure you've met a lot of people, and maybe yourself, where you feel, I'm stuck. There's no way out. I've tried everything, And you see the world as a machine that you can't get out of. And it's because you're in this fear and stress. No gratitude, no true imagination. So, the other end of the spectrum, when you are in a state of gratitude, your brain will connect and observe beyond what is manifested. Because we all have imagination. We all have our inner worlds. We all have dreams. We all have subconscious, right? And all of that is beyond what is already manifested. So the brain will then open the bridge between the two and they say, well, how can I expand my manifested reality? What can I bring into reality? And that becomes fun and interesting. But the brain can only do that in the state of the kind of fullness of the heart, which is gratitude. So, think of gratitude more as the fullness of the heart than the power game of, oh, I'm so grateful, because that's just a power game, right? But the fullness of the heart, it's recognizing that everything is here, right? It's my imagination is what defines my reality, because it's there. I just have to connect the two levels and to see how can I bring something into this world. And that's when things become interesting, because then you also recognize in your brain that, all right, I'm not limited by what's already manifested. Right? I cannot be stuck. It's impossible, because I can use my imagination and then open up a door to something that doesn't exist yet. I can let my dreams guide me. I can see that there are endless possibilities and opportunities, but I have to look beyond the obvious. For most people, this is very difficult today because of the systemic stress and the fear. And they always are feeling that we're not good enough. And if we don't feel like we're good enough, it also means that we don't have enough. We always think that having more will be the solution to not being good enough. Because we're told that that is the solution. This is how marketing works. And it makes us more miserable and more fearful and less grateful. So we become more demanding and more unhappy. Turning this around is really challenging and really difficult, right? Because we have, in this culture, perverted basically everything. And there is no sense of true gratitude anymore. So understanding that the state of imagination and true gratitude is the same state. And that fullness of heart changes how your brain operates physically. You will be able to see and think and feel beyond what is manifested. So, and when you look at the opposite, when we feel stress and resentment, and when we feel entitlement, I would say entitlement is pretty much the opposite of gratitude. It's demanding, right? And we can see that it closes the heart. And then the brain will operate in a lower level. So, what we can learn is to then not just be grateful for what we have, but for everything that exists that we have not yet brought into reality. Because gratitude is the most powerful way to manifest. And we'll kind of look into that in a moment. The key and the simplest way to explain this is that you need to feel the thing you want and not feel that you want it. Do you understand the difference? Once you're able to feel in your heart what you want, it is actually there as energy, because everything starts as information energy. So when you can feel it, and it's your heart, and the heart that is full, you're in a state of gratitude, which means then your brain will go, well, how do we manifest this? How do we find it? And understand that your brain biologically already has that level. It's a cultural thing right now, but we have stooped to the lowest level, where people have lost their own true imagination, their own true creativity, and we're overtaken by stress and fear. But when you can feel something, it is real to you, and it is in your reality. And then your brain will become that bridge, and you will be able to kind of look for the opportunities. You will be able to look for kind of the cracks in the wall, or the doors, or the manifestations, because then it will start gravitating towards the kind of steps you need to go through in order to manifest or to achieve your goal. When you feel that you want something, you are then feeling the distance, and you're feeling your story, and you're feeling your stress, and you're feeling the entitlement. And that does not manifest anything except for the distance. So it will manifest you not having it. So we need to learn to feel it in the fullness of the heart, so it becomes part of us. So we'll get back to that in a moment, how you may use gratitude to manifest. Right? Because all these wants that we have in life, they block us from manifestation, which means we become even more dependent on the manifestations of other people and corporations and this big machine around us. Right? So we become poorer and poorer as individuals, not being able to take care of ourselves, not able to create the lives that we want. And this is, to me, the tragic thing about our civilization, is that we have more and more things, but as beings, we're getting poorer and poorer. Because we're not able to manifest, we're not able to create, we have no imagination. We're suffering, we're in stress, we're in fear. And that will make us even more dependent on everything outside of us. And then we self-medicate, and then we're in complete lack of control. And the big machine will be controlling us fully. Right? So working with gratitude is really about turning this around and becoming the master of manifestation in your own life. We have some questions.
I was in America this past weekend celebrating the wedding of my older brother, and I was reflecting because as we were preparing for this episode, I'm in the midst of this celebration where people had gathered from all over the world, and it was also just reflecting on the amount of resources it took to move my body from Norway all the way to Montana. And then around Montana, we were in different places. We had, 4 rental cars for the family, and there were all these guests and meals, and it was so much. And yet what I was reflecting on is, oh my gosh, like the amount of flow occurring right now when people consciously choose a consciousness of celebration, appreciation, joy, love, connection. I just feel like I was in the midst of kind of a manifested experience of exactly what you're talking about tonight. So I just wanted to share that because I think we've all been there where when our community or our family, really just lets go and says, screw the boundaries or the limitations. We're gonna do it, and we do it. I just find it fascinating.
Right, and it's that also when we operate from love and from being grateful that we are together. Back to that, it opens imagination, and it opens imagination becoming real. When we are in fear and stress, as that we are limited to what is already there, and there is no flow, and the universe cannot change it. When we are in a state of heart, in the fullness of the heart, and our brain changes, we start to vibrate on a higher rate, meaning that the universe can then bring in what does not yet exist. And it means, for instance, instead of just finding solutions within what is there, all of a sudden things may change. I think you've all experienced this. Sometimes we're in that zone, that flow, and things just move around, things shift. It's because you're then connected to the level of imagination, right? Because what has yet been manifested does not limit the universe from what can be manifested. And this is the wonderful thing about our imagination. It means that we, in our minds, our brains, can go past the limitations of what already is in this material world and open up to the universe, moving things around. Because if you think of everything in existence, it's just imagination through matter. Right? So, there are no limits. So when we are in the state of the heart and when we open up, often we experience this more. Right? When we are in fear, we have to just like fight and hammer our way through. When we are in a state of the heart, things flow. Miracles happen. Right? When a miracle happens, it's basically that something is manifesting beyond what we see as the current limitations of the space we're in. It doesn't mean that it's not natural laws, but they're more expanded, right, beyond what is already there. So, you know, when we're in a state of imagination, we say, sure, that can happen, right? Understand that in your brain, in your mind, you're already in connection with many different kind of levels of existence. And your subconscious is the biological kind of melting pot, right? But we need to open up for this to bring into the world what can be. Because your life is nothing compared to what it could possibly be. So try to learn to be grateful for what is not yet there. Right? Open up and see the possibilities. And learn to appreciate that, you know, you have full access to everything. And you need to access that imagination and build that bridge also in your brain. And it's through gratitude. And this is also why when you are grateful, you will get more. I often use this as an example. If you were to, you know, have a dinner party, and someone really enjoyed their food, right? You would be happy about that, and you would give them more. You would not enjoy it so much as someone sitting there just like using a fork and, you know, you like it when people just like, this is the best thing ever, right? That's gratitude. So it's also learning to kind of be part of what is here and really, you know, enjoy it and use it. And the thing is, when we have fear and stress, as I said, everything contracts, everything becomes smaller. And there is less enjoyment. Enjoyment and gratitude are so connected, also in the brain and also in our consciousness. When you truly enjoy something, you are in a state of gratitude. Because you are co-creating, you're interacting, and you're in a state of love and flow. We had another question?
Yeah, so...
No, there first.
Did we have one in the audience?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't see that one.
You have taught us that in our biology, in our bodies, we have zillions of microorganisms, and they also have their own consciousness. In what kind of way are they some kind of antennas for systemic stress or love from the universe, and how does that compare to our heart and the consciousness there?
Well, they're basically part of your biology. It's the principle that all life is ecosystem. So it's beautiful that for a life form, like the human body to survive, it needs other life forms. It's co-creation. So they have specific functions, right? Just like in your intestines, right? You need bacteria to digest food, you know? And it's just also in plants, you know? Photosynthesis is actually not done by the plants. The cells in the plants are actually separate life forms, but they've kind of like over time kind of grown into become part of the plant, just like we have microbes. But it's understanding that there are so many levels of life, and it's all kind of specialized, and it works together, right? And it also offers then different types of consciousness. And remember that, you know, when we have microbes in our system, they are connected to their own collective consciousness, right? So when they exist in all mammals, right? Basically is that they also will harmonize how we digest ourselves and life on this planet. It makes sure that we're not too much in the individual state. So we kind of share everything, and so there are thoughts and emotions and impulses and everything that are collective and are shared on different levels. There is no such thing as an individual. And that is a beautiful thing. So also when we have kind of microbes in our system, they also take part in our journey. And think of it, when you have a dog, for instance, and the dog will take part in the human journey, then having a very different journey than if there were no humans. Right? So we all exchange consciousness and perspective and influence each other. And that's how life works. All life exists in the same space. All different levels of consciousness interact and need each other to grow and to heal. So also when it comes to gratitude, I think it's so important also to practice gratitude towards all these microbes. Everything it takes for this life form to exist. You know, we eat other life forms, and eventually they eat us. You know, it's just seeing this wonderful ecosystem and all these different levels of manifestation being together and kind of existing together and learning. We have a tendency in our culture to never really recognize our own presence in our own bodies and to be grateful for that, because we're so obsessed with finding flaws, finding what's wrong. It's back to the state of this culture where it's so much fear and stress based. Because again, as I said, this is how you sell products. So gratitude is the key to how we can set ourselves free from all of that. But it takes practice. And as it takes the practice of the fullness of the heart and to kind of like, you know, recognize that and what it is, and then open your imaginations and connect with the fact that you're not limited by anything. Right? This is where it starts.
Yes, so we have a question on YouTube. What if someone has been using the principle of gratitude similar to the way you've been describing, feeling that it's already there, etc., in order to manifest certain things for quite some time, but it has not worked out as expected? What now?
Well, then it's not gratitude. Because it's not about you controlling life. It's you being grateful for everything it takes for you to be able to have the experience of being here. You have no idea what you need. Life does. When we work with the heart, we will often get less of what we think we want and more of what we actually need. Often two very different things. So, as we expand spiritually, we will be more in harmony with life, more in harmony with what actually causes growth and healing, because life will not assist you in giving you anything that will block you from growing or healing, because that's against nature. If what you want is in alignment with your healing and with your growth, yes, that can manifest. But if what you want is actually the opposite, or is not contributing to your healing and growth, even though you may think it is, it will not happen. Life can only manifest what will cause growth and healing. And that's the reason. So then often when we think that we're grateful, we're actually just trying to manipulate gratitude into a weapon so we can get what we want. That's not gratitude. And that's why it's not working for you. Because you've set like what you want first, and then this is a way to achieve it. That's not gratitude. That's not how manifestation works. It's back to feeling that you want it. That will always block manifestation. You have to feel it and recognizing that it's there as energy and information. And if it wants to, you invite it. And understanding that it doesn't belong to you. Everything belongs to the universe, but you can invite it. And you can be grateful for its presence. But again, when we want to manifest, back to what we talked about in the beginning, often it comes from the story of lack, the story of pain, the story of not understanding how to navigate, and it's so unfair that everybody else has and I don't have, all of that. That is horizontal survival. And we often start with that, right? And then we try to use techniques to achieve horizontal survival. You cannot use spiritual techniques to satisfy your need for horizontal survival, because horizontal survival is an illusion, because you can never die as a spiritual being. Your body will die, but you won't. So, in the fullness of the heart, you already recognize that I really don't need anything. So your manifestation will come from imagination rather than need. Right? I know this is kind of tricky, but it's also for you then to try to establish a different practice.
All right, we have another question here. I notice that when I'm in abundance, it's easier to stay there, but when I happen to slip down into poverty, it's hard to get back into abundance and creativity again. Like, for example, when my bank account has room for unforeseen things, I'm able to manifest a lot more all the time. But when my bank account shows me that I need to be in saving mode, I struggle to manifest more money. Even if I know how to manifest, my fear still keeps me in poverty mode. How can I pull myself more easily out of the fear when I'm in a temporary period of lack?
I think this is an excellent question, because this is exactly why it's so difficult. Because when we feel that fear of survival, when we are in that type of stress, your brain is hardwired to go into this black and white survival mode where everything is about solving a problem and to not die. Then you're not able to see anything else. You're not able to get any ideas, because everything will be within that framework. And so, how to do it is you have to then pull back completely from the idea that any of that matters. And understand that true gratitude is not connected to anything. It is a state beyond survival and free imagination. And just being in the fullness of the heart, not connected to anything. Recognize that the biological way, as we talked about, when we relate to gratitude, it's connected to a thing, a manifestation, that we get what we want or what we need to survive. So we can pinpoint, I have that. I have money. It's the relief of not dying, right? So as long as we're there, it's impossible. So we need to meditate and practice the state of fullness of the heart and gratitude that is not connected to anything. And over time, you will recognize that it's simply a state of consciousness that you can move in and out of. So you should never, in a way, be grateful for something. You should just be grateful. Because when you are grateful in a conditional way, it will only last for a while. As I say, like, you can be grateful for something, And then all of a sudden you will not be grateful anymore because that thing does not mean anything to you anymore. True gratitude is only possible when you don't connect it to anything. So it cannot be a reaction to something or the lack of something, just a pure state in itself. It has to be unconditional. And this is, practicing this is how you assist your brain and your body and the heart to understand the state. So when you need it, you can simply switch it on. And especially when we feel lost in these fear patterns, because it's genetic, right? Fear has helped this life form surviving. Fear is smart when it comes to survival, but it's a bitch when it comes to, erasing our consciousness. So it's tricky. But when we act from fear, we've lost it. So we need to practice, recognizing what the state of gratitude is, because that will open all doors of what is possible. But for as long as you want something and you're trying to manifest from the wanting, you're already in the horizontal survival game, and therefore it can't happen. It has to come from abundance, which means, because, no direction, no need, no survival. It's just imagination. Right? This is also why people are so attracted to the free imagination. Well, look at a guy like Walt Disney. I don't know, it's totally anti-woke and everything, he's canceled. But still, when you look at who he was and what he brought into the world, everything that he did was just, abundance of free imagination and what could be, not what is already, but imaginary worlds and bringing that into reality. And people are so attracted to that idea because we know this is the solution. This is where abundance is. And he was so good at recognizing that abundance of imagination and what could possibly be, not what already was. So as humans, we are attracted to individuals and spaces that operate in this free imagination. And there are fewer and fewer of them, because now even Disney is just like, it's business. They have focus groups for everything, and it's like, it's no free imagination anymore. Right? But still, we are attracted to those spaces and those people when we can find them. And back in the day when Disney was alive, that energy, right? And that feeling of free imagination and abundance, that did something with this world and our civilization, right? And it's that. It opens up the possibilities and your own imagination. Please try to imagine more, but don't do it from the perspective of your life sucking, or that you lack, that you need or want something. Life doesn't care. Life will only manifest when it is an extension of it, not you.
All right, we have a question on YouTube. With gratitude comes a responsibility to give back in return. Could you please comment on the balance between these two? And I was reflecting this weekend also on that you really can't truly give unless you also can truly receive. So I think they're very linked there, please.
Think of it as life just passing through you. You don't have ownership to anything, not even your own body, right? You're here as a guest. And this planet And the life forms and everything has, basically given you the body you're in. You're just visiting. You don't own it. So when you receive, it's passing through. If it's not passing through, then you are a blockage. When you think that you should hold on to it, think of how an ecosystem works. Think of the whole planet. Everything passes through everything else. Absolutely everything. The particles that make up your body, there are so many of them, that those particles have probably been in every single living being on this planet throughout history. And they will carry their own memories, their own vibration. And your body is just a construct of all of these particles. And then at some point, so you're not given so that you can hold on to it. Part of abundance is just you let things pass. But you co-create. Understand that when something passes through you, you are supposed to give it color. That is part of co-creation, right? So even when you drink water, that water will take the imprint of you before it leaves you. Everything you do, you will contribute something. And this is how life expands. It's not just by you sitting down meditating and expanding your consciousness. It's by you existing and letting things pass through. So life needs to pass things through you in order to expand on what reality is. So as we grow spiritually, giving and receiving becomes the same thing. And it's not a responsibility, it's just like breathing. It's just how things work. You give and you receive and you don't really think about it because everything passes. And you give what's needed when it's needed and you receive when that's needed. And it's completely seamless and you don't really think about it. But you just practice non-ownership. And that we don't control, that we don't try to create a narrative or try to decide what reality is. We let it be and we let it pass through us. And through that, we learn what reality is. We learn more about life because we're not standing in the way. And this is also what happens in the fullness of the heart. Remember, as I said, like when you are in your stories of need, when you're in the stories of pain and suffering, you feel, I never have enough. I've talked to billionaires, they have private jets and yachts and multiple houses and they feel they don't have enough, they're almost dying. Because it's a state of consciousness. It's a black hole. It's never enough. So, when we are in the fullness of the heart, we feel that we can relax. We don't need to hold on to anything, right? When you're, fat and happy, it's easier for you to be generous because then you don't need anything, right? You can let other people have the last piece of cake and you feel very generous, right? But you've been stuffing yourself for hours, but at least now, and it's that. So when we recognize, when we practice the fullness of the heart, the brain changes priority and I say, well, it's connectedness, it's love, it's being in this world. And the brain will start reflecting on what actually is important. And you will see that there's nothing to be afraid of. You will feel closer to the world around you. You will feel closer to other people. It's easier for you to sit by yourself and, oh, I love everybody today, right? And it means that at that very moment, you become more generous and you'll let things flow. You're not holding on to things because whenever we hold on, it is fear, it is control, it is survival. It is stress. So the more we just try to focus on how we can expand the heart in that type of gratitude, things will just start to flow. And we know this. When we are in the state of heart, many of you hopefully have experienced that we can feel detached and then we can see things happening. Things come in and they go, and we have no need to control. But life will give us. And then life will instruct us to give something. We just do it, and no big deal. Because when we're full, we can be generous. We are able to lift ourselves past survival. Now, what is interesting also, when it comes to the balance between the horizontal and the vertical, survival is also the key to you having learned how to operate in harmony with the laws of nature in your current space. So I think each level of consciousness will have different combination of laws of nature and different spiritual laws that you're studying, right? So from a horizontal perspective, survival is the key, because when you've figured out how to survive and thrive and be productive, it means that, now you're starting to understand how this space works. And only then can you feel open and generous and loving, so you may then expand and lift your consciousness and then go to the finer points of what reality is in this space. What are the spiritual principles? Because you need to work on the coarser stuff first. So the starting point will always be horizontal, will always be survival, will always be all of that until you've figured it out. Right? And so it is with each level of consciousness. There will always be, you may feel that, I've understood everything. I'm so spiritual. I'm so have no needs. And then when you enter the next space, it's survival all over again. So it's how we learn. So it's also how we can recognize where we are in our own spiritual studies in the space. So it's completely natural, right? So when you are in a life space and you feel that you're completely consumed with fear and survival and stress and all that, it doesn't mean that this is your complete level of consciousness. It means that in that particular space, in that particular combination of spiritual principles, natural laws that you're studying, this is your level, right? As you can be, the world's leading physicist and a terrible cook, right? And that's fine. This is how we all are. So understand that we operate in many different levels. So in spiritual work today, there's so much kind of posing and so much horizontal competition because, I'm more spiritual than you, all of that crap. Just understand that we all operate in many different levels of consciousness. So we should have love and gratitude, even when we feel that we're on the most kind of primitive level in what we're dealing with, because sure, it means that we're studying something new, right? And that's wonderful. But we can learn to get a kind of better methodology in how we approach these different spaces. So even when we approach a space with, there are principles here that I'm not used to, so I'm forced into this very horizontal survival program, we can still work on the heart. We can say, okay, right, this is how we operate in a space. Okay, I have to, work on the heart. I have to focus on this. I have to become, and then gradually you're able to free yourself from the horizontal kind of rules, and you can use what you've learned in other spaces and apply that so you can advance more quickly. And this is also what we see when we have been on a spiritual journey, on a spiritual path for a while. We can see that we're beginning to apply what we have learned in our processes, and we kind of understand, there are principles here, and I can use that in this space too. So also keep in mind that, you are not truly limited by anything than your own kind of competence in that exact moment, right? And spiritual practices means also to get in place ways to deal with ourselves, our processes, and spiritual principles in such a way that we kind of know the drill. We can recognize, oh, I'm here. Okay, this is how I work with this type of thing. So I always advise people to have robust spiritual practices every day, because it means that we are able to meet the most primitive parts of ourselves with enthusiasm, and fun, and not feel trapped. Right? Because so much of what we're dealing with in this world today, it's so much bullshit, so much illusion, so much pain, so much suffering. And it's so easy to be sucked into it. Our whole civilization is off the rails. And you don't have to be. But then we need to, back to the fullness of the heart, to learn what gratitude is. Because it also means that you will over time then learn how to allow for the universe to manifest what you need in order to advance spiritually. Because that is what we really should try to manifest, not what we think we need. So this power game and competition where we always try to compare ourselves with others and all that pain of not fitting, we can just skip that part and just allow for life to show us what will bring us the greatest joy and growth and love and healing. And life will do that. But only if your heart is already full. Any other questions?
There is some desire for a little bit more specifics, perhaps a meditation or an affirmation, and in two ways, for adults and for children, how to really, tune into gratitude and abundance as part of a robust spiritual practice.
For kids?
For kids and for adults.
Yeah, okay. If we start with kids. The disappointing thing is that they learn from us, right? So we have to set the example. And we can see in what kids actually do, what we are actually doing. It's that simple. So there's no way around it. You cannot teach kids to do something you're not doing yourself. And if you're doing it yourself, you don't have to teach them. It's that simple. So when we are dedicated spiritually and when we are loving and we're really doing our best, kids learn from that. But when we are consumed with our own patterns, our own suffering, all of that, that's what kids will become. So deciding on the family values and living up to them are important. And especially today with our whole civilization being inflamed and extremely destructive. Taking that responsibility to set the example for real every day, not when it's convenient, but especially when it's not, right? And to want to be that example. And then not just to your kids, but to everyone. I think it's so important today that we decide to be living examples of how things should be done. Because if we're not setting the example, then we could just shut up. We have no right to complain. We really don't have a right to have any opinion because we're not offering the solution. Right? And if we're offering the solution, we stop complaining. Right? So we always need to look at ourselves and who we are and what we do and how we are impacting the world and what we let ourselves get away with because we really shouldn't. right? But to me, also, spiritual growth is about also growing into the joy, growing into love, growing into gratitude, growing into a state of healing and abundance and all of that wonderful stuff, and live from there. And understand that gratitude is not connected to you getting what you want. It's allowing for life to manifest what you need. Right? So look at how your mind works and your belief systems around gratitude and manifestation, because it gets in the way. Now, when it comes to manifestation, I can share one technique with you, which is kind of like fun, because people have a tendency to only create one type of affirmation or one way to do it, right? Now, understand that when you want to manifest, again, you need to fully feel what you want to manifest, but you can't want to manifest it. You will just have to feel it and acknowledge it and be grateful for it. When we're grateful, we open up this like, yeah, I want more. I'm enjoying this so much that it has to manifest. If you need it, you're pushing it away. Now, one type of manifestation exercise that I often teach people is going through the chakras and just understand that the different chakras represent a different angle. So, if you think of the root chakra, that is connected to manifestation and also who you are in the world. So, you can, for instance, if we just like take money, everybody loves money, and it's quite neutral. Okay, so just think of, with the root chakra, you can say, I manifest money. Okay, and then you have the next chakra, which is also connected to your creativity and sexuality, and then say, I create money. And then you have the solar plexus, which is connected to everything you do in the world, your interactions. So then you can say that I interact and co-create money and everything that is producing value in the world, right? And for the heart, again, I'm grateful for all the money. I love money. And with the throat chakra, because that's connected to communication, I communicate money, I talk money, I speak money, right? And I listen to money, right? And then you have the third eye, which is I understand money. I know all about money. And then the crown chakra, I am money. I'm channeling money, and this is my reality. Right? So understand, like, by including the angle of each chakra, you get a fuller way to create affirmations. And then try to feel it. Try to feel that reality. But from fun and abundance, not from needing it or wanting it, because it will block it, but it means that you are inviting it. And you're creating a more kind of full state of affirmation. So you can do this with any affirmation. Just look at the different chakras and what they represent and include all of it. And just play around with how can you say this and kind of express this affirmation in as many ways as possible. And feel all of it. Because this increases your chance of feeling what it is you're talking about, right? Because now, going through the chakras, you have the opportunity to feel money and your relationship with it in many different ways. right? So just saying, I am this, that's not enough. You have to go through the different angles. And try this approach with any form of affirmation that you want to create. Just play around with it and just really try to feel each state. And then when you've gone through, you know, all the chakras, just like try to invite it in and just like feel that pure energy from imagination, what can be. Not limited to what is already. Because remember that when you suffer because of what already is, that excludes imagination. Because then you're just fantasizing about how can I get out of my misery. When you recognize, well, this is what has been manifested so far, that's not a limitation. Let's manifest something else, right? So live through this open, free imagination and just also be grateful. Because everything exists as information. And it's up to you to bring it in here if you are vibrating it in such a way that it has to exist here. The universe does not care about your needs and your suffering because it means that you don't understand fuck when you do. Right? It will only manifest what is an extension of itself. And it's that, right? Your own true growth and healing and expansion, that is in alignment with the universe, not your suffering stories. So, because when you are there, it means you've got more to learn. By suffering, by having to deal with the horizontal games of survival, life will not give you a shortcut, meaning that you will not learn. As that you are here to first learn survival, and then you can learn about the principles, because you have to internalize them by living through them, right? So you can't cut through that process, and life will not support it. This is often why people who are really good at manifesting, it's because they've already understood how that space works. It's simple because they do understand the natural laws in this space. And then at some point, they enter the new space and it's survival all over again, right? So it's just how it is. But gratitude in every possible way, and to truly try to meditate and understand this state of openness and generosity and fullness, and how it changes your outlook on life. You can feel grateful for a complete stranger. You will feel grateful for anything, right? And it's that state. So once you remove being grateful for not dying and that, oh, I've got what I need now, or that power story, oh, well, obviously I don't deserve anything more than this, but I guess I should be grateful. All of that, just like, whew. It's also the recognition of someone and being grateful for being able to take part in that exchange in that moment. I know most of you have had these moments where you've interacted with someone and you can feel that connectedness and you feel grateful, because that is also spiritually the recognition of connectedness. And this is another kind of part of the spiritual gratitude. And all of you will recognize this, right? Whenever you experience true connectedness with someone, you are in this state of gratitude. And you feel, wow, that was great. That was really something. And it lingers and you feel full in the heart. And it's that simple. So connectedness is also a version of gratitude. Because in connectedness, you can't really separate who's giving and who's receiving. It's the same thing in the same moment. Right? So there are no transactions. It's just like shared beingness. And that will move you into gratitude. So this is another practice, to practice connectedness with others, with objects, with plants, animals, whatever, but feel that co-presence and that exchange. Right? And when you do that through the heart, you can feel that your heart becomes fuller. And when you can feel that, it will affect your physical heart, and and it will then affect your brain. So it's not difficult at all. It's just like in our current civilization, we've completely lost the plot. Right? And this is why spiritual practices are so important. We cannot expand spiritually today unless we truly aim for it, and that we experiment with practices and figure out how we work. As I always say, we need to understand evolution, we need to understand our bodies, we need to understand the human journey so we can fully kind of operate the human state and the human journey without being a victim or a slave or feeling that we are blocked by it. We need to learn how to become the driver, right? How to be free and how to utilize this state and this body and also being in this culture. But without spiritual practices, people are lost, right? So gratitude is one of those principles I think is so important, because we all, as humans, we understand it. And I think also for all of you, this is something you can talk about, right? Gratitude is something people at least, have some form of understanding of and say, well, this is an important spiritual key. For some people, spiritual work can seem so mystical and so unfamiliar. But as I was saying, well, you can start by focusing on gratitude and how that affects you and feel your heart, right? I think it's so important today that we offer entry-level spiritual practices, right? And that all of you also talk with people about where do we start? Gratitude is something that we all can understand, that we can all practice, and that we all have some type of connection to, right? And just for people to sit down, 5 minutes a day and try to be grateful. That in itself will have an effect. Even having a conversation with someone about gratitude. Focusing what are you grateful for? And gradually turn them into, well, what about just feeling grateful for no reason at all? Have you ever thought about that? Right? We need to help each other find the spiritual connection through what is already here, what's already in our bodies and in our minds. And gratitude is such a wonderful key. So, all of you try to keep in mind that people are struggling. People are confused and can't find their way. And having conversations around gratitude can be a way for people to connect with something in them that is true. We have another question?
Yes. So, one of our listeners on YouTube's, her father has turned 80 this year, and she can see a shift in him, that gratitude is much more present and expressed in him than before. And the whole family can sense this, and it affects us down to the generations. And she's wondering, kind of, age and lived life experience seems to also contribute to the development of gratitude in us?
Yes, and often it comes with age, because remember that when we're younger, we're supposed to be ambitious, we're supposed to be greedy, we're supposed to try to climb the ladder and whatever else and make something of ourselves. And then we're not necessarily very grateful. And it is possible to be ambitious and be grateful at the same time. Again, it's not about being a beggar, it's about the state. You can be greedy and grateful for everything you're getting, you know. So, but as we get older, we start to let go of having to achieve anything. We don't have anything more to prove, and we can't because we're past it, right? And because we can't, it's easier to let go. And when we let go, it's easier to look at what we already have, how we are blessed. And then we can see, you know, if we have kids and grandkids, you can see, wow, you know, that's really something. And we can see that we're such a small part. And that life kind of moves on. You can see our grandkids growing up, and they're now on that track of trying to make something of themselves. And you can just more easily feel that love and that connectedness, which also brings you into gratitude, because again, when you have nothing to prove, it's easier to be grateful. So yes, it comes with age. And I've seen this as so many people, when they get to a certain age and they begin to kind of let go of who they used to be, everything they think they should be doing, you know, because they can't, right? And for instance, one thing that's really interesting is that the older you get, if you have a sex life, you're more happy with your sex life the older you get. And we think, what? How can a 70-year-old person be more happy with their sex life than when you're in your 20s? It's because you don't have a beach body anymore. You can stop pretending, because no one's going to buy it, right? You got what you got, and that's okay. So then it's about being with someone, right? And being sexual, and we're, you know, it's not about being pretentious. You're like, all those insecurities are gone because you can't compete, you know? So often what happens is that people get more happy with their sex life the older they get, because they let go of all that pretentious crap, all the insecurities, all that, you know, how do I look? Is my body good enough? Because like, no, it's not. You know, so it's, you can just like let go, right? And you can just be yourself, because that's what you got anyway. And so we become, as we get older, often more focused on what's inside. This is like the packaging is beginning to fall apart. But often that means that what's inside becomes more crystallized and clear and more visible in who you are as a person. Hopefully, you know, throughout your life, you become a better version of yourself than you were in the very beginning. So, you know, I think the human journey is beautiful in that way, that you start out as a narcissistic asshole. All children are. And as you grow up, you think you know everything and all of that. You're not a good person. But you have the body and the strength, and look at all of that. You have the packaging, but there's nobody home. And as that changes, as you grow, as you learn, as you mature, as you become more humble, then the physical body begins to, you know, mature and fall apart. And gradually then who you are, the older you get, who you are and what that means become clear, and you can live from that. So I think it's beautiful that who you are and what actually matters, that becomes more and more beautiful. And even though your body gets old, who you are may start to kind of shine through, right? And there's a beauty to that. So there is something about that kind of journey, that maturity and the humility, and having to let go of everything you know, could, all your achievements, all your strength. And I've seen also this with the people with Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, or, you know, where they slowly go and they're aware of it. And maybe people who used to be very powerful and strong, and now they need other people's help, and maybe they've never let anyone help them. They don't have a choice. And then they get it, that they also have to let other people give. They have to let other people express their love. And then they can move into a state of immense gratitude. It doesn't happen to everyone, but I'm sure many of you have had this experience also with older people, that some of them get to this state where it's just love. They are in the state of heart, and they've kind of given up everything else, meaning that who they are becomes kind of pure and more present. And it's really beautiful. So yes, hopefully when someone has a true journey in the human form, one should be more grateful, more loving, more humble as one gets older. And that is also the beautiful thing, if we have families that are close, that when someone has kind of reached that level of insight, that may inspire and kind of trickle down to the different generations, and reminding them of what is actually important. Right? It used to be that way. When you look back, a few generations ago, the generations used to interact a lot more. And the wisdom of the old people would guide the young people. And now that is gone. The young people do not have access to wisdom. They have access to TikTok. It's not the same thing. And that's a huge problem, because it means that young people are completely misguided, and they believe a little bit too much in themselves and their own illusions, right? So it's something about, the maturing of the heart, and at least you can do it. And you can try to show it. You can try to be someone who can guide others through your own maturation.
Yes, we have a question in the audience.
Yeah, a question with a lot about what you've spoken about already, but it's a different angle. And I see that when I'm like meditating and I'm imagination and everything, I can really create that state and be grateful. And then when I like enter the world, and my God, how am I going to keep that state there? And I really find it interesting what you said about older people, because I see that a lot of the things that happen when I'm in the world is like my brain automatically compartmentalizes different things, like myself. So it's automatically which makes me stay in the same state, even though I work myself out of it. And I was like thinking, how can I be more like an older person? Like, have you got any practical tips to like release those automatic in the moments, in interactions with the world and with other people?
Well, I think what we're talking about is wisdom. And I've said before that wisdom comes when knowledge is lived, right? And it's that, never assuming that we understand anything before it's lived. And when we have lived it, we understand also, oh, it's not that simple, right? And practicing humility is a big part of gratitude. It's not possible to be grateful and not humble. Often, when we think of the moments we've been most grateful, not the greed type of grateful as a kid getting a new bike for Christmas type of gratitude. It's when something has touched us, right? It's a state of humility. And wisdom is also a state of humility, because you understand your own limitations. You understand that you really don't know anything and that you are insignificant. You know, no matter how we look at wisdom, that understanding that we are, you know, when we look at it from a cosmic perspective, we are a speck of dust, we're insignificant. But life is not, right? And the balance between the ego and our self-importance and the universe, you know, that begins to shift. And it's just practicing that, you know, being in these, you know, bigger perspectives. Because I think, you know, also when we look at wise people, old people, they have already seen that whatever they think they know, oh, well, it wasn't that important, right? Obviously, life has more to offer than my own thoughts, right? And it's just, to me, humility is a realism of scale. The ego will always overemphasize one's own importance. And as we get wiser and more humble, it's basically that we understand the proportions. We can see that whatever I think and understand, like, it's not important. And then we begin to focus on what actually is. Yeah, because humility is not about, oh, I'm so insignificant, I shouldn't like, it's no, the self is insignificant. We begin to focus on what is actually important, what is true and what is real, beyond the self, beyond the person, beyond the individual. And then we can sense that we can move into harmony with that. It's not about claiming that I know truth. Is understand that I can't know truth. I can allow it. I can be present in it. But I would never claim to own it or control it or to know it fully. And that is how we invite it in, right? So it's that softness and understanding more about true proportions. When people are young and full of themselves, again, it's that like Trump thing where whatever it is, it's the greatest ever, right? And it's not. And it's like every time he says something like, you know, nobody knows more about this than me. I've seen these videos where they've made this like collage of every time he said that, and it's basically everything ever. And of course, it's not how it works, but this is, you know, this is what we grow out of, because we all have a Trump inside of us, you know? And that's also why people like, because we all wish we could be like that. So we kind of want someone to be like that, because then we're allowed to be a selfish person as well, because we all want to, until we don't. Until humility becomes more important, because humility, gratitude and love, they're so connected, right? So when we're softer, we can look at our own perspectives and go, it's completely uninteresting. The ego is completely uninteresting. It's only what is that is truly fascinating, because what I do as an ego, I distort it, I corrupt it, and I remove the beauty of what already is. Right? And I think for many people, also when they get older, even if they're not on a spiritual path, this begins to happen. We begin to relate to, well, I'm going to die, and nobody's going to miss me. They won't miss me for a week, and then life, you know, and it's like, you know, it reminds us that life moves on and we're not really irreplaceable. And it's so healthy. Right, so I think like having those perspectives, that will help us move more into wisdom. When we look at the difference between knowledge and wisdom, knowledge is often we have clear definitions and we believe that they're true, that we're in control of them and we have understood them. Right? Wisdom is the opposite. Wisdom is trying to be in a state of principle, beyond the knowledge. We have lived, we're interacting, we understand, oh, well, there are multiple ways of dealing with this, and I probably don't have the full understanding, and that's fine. Right? It's back to proportions. So we don't have to get old to practice this. Right? I think practicing humility and understanding that no matter how much we learn, it's still absolutely nothing. So all we can do is to invite the universe in and to be soft enough to listen and to allow it and to experience the wonder of what life is. And it can only happen when we stop grasping, when we stop trying to control, when we manifest, and when we're in this survival thing, when we make everything about us. Because then we distort everything, right? So resting in that openness, and resting in that kind of gratitude, and allowing for life to show itself and pass through us without us not having to fully understand. It brings us closer to what wisdom is. So for all of you, as I said, gratitude is one of these principles that we can bring up in any kind of conversation, really. And to try to assist people be less consumed by their own suffering and by this misguided civilization. Try to be in the state of gratitude yourself. Try to practice that we can never, ever get past the fact that we have to set the example. We have to demonstrate the type of consciousness that we want to kind of bring into the world, or what we want to represent. Then we have to live it. Otherwise, we're just faking it. Right? But in our own process, being grateful and practicing gratitude in whatever way, that's a start. You can be grateful for your home, for what you eat. You can be grateful for absolutely anything. It will still train that kind of state of consciousness. And the more you let this affect your heart and your state of consciousness, the more you will notice that life will begin to manifest for you. Because you have to open the doors into imagination. And then you have to surrender it. And then you have to kind of rest in that state of humility and openness and just invite in. And the rest is up to life. As I said before, the only thing that can possibly happen, that can possibly manifest, is what will bring you growth and healing and expand your capacity for love. So study gratitude in your meditations and reflect and just, try to bring it up in your inner conversations. And over time, you will soften. You will be more humble. And you will see that your life will begin to include what previously was only in your imagination. And that is the power that gratitude has. Most of your life, most of what is possible to you, has not yet been manifested, but it exists in your imagination.
Thank you, IKYA. We are grateful for the teaching tonight. Thank you all for joining us, both here at IKYA Center and on YouTube Live. And may we all be bearers of love, gratitude, and humility in this season of Thanksgiving. So let's all bring that out with us, and let's gather again in a month from now on the third Monday of December, 16th of December at 19 o'clock Oslo time, and we'll have a special holiday, a Christmas edition of IKYA Live. But until then, again, let's be in our hearts, let's bring gratitude out, and as IKYA has reminded us, it is a contact point. It is a point of connection and communication with absolutely anybody. So let's do it. All right. Thank you again for joining us for IKYA Live, and we will see you on the 16th of December.